right, welcome to another live stream. We're going to be talking about Codex Bezae, and oftentimes what happens is when you start talking about biblical manuscripts, everybody likes to hate on Codex Vaticanus and Codex Sinaiticus, but I think your hate is a little misplaced because there's actually a manuscript that is a lot worse than Codex Vaticanus and Sinaiticus. Now, I don't think that Vaticanus and Sinaiticus are necessarily like terrible manuscripts, like, oh man, but I also don't think they're the greatest thing since sliced bread. But there is objectively a worse manuscript than anything that has come out of, like worse than any other manuscript, and that would be Codex Bezae, a 5th century manuscript, and it's got some very interesting readings in it. We'll take a look at some of those, and just generally speaking, it's filled with these transpositional errors, spelling words differently, and the whole idea of Western interpolations seems to have come specifically from Codex D. And then, of course, Codex D is considered the poster child of the Western text type. So I don't know how much of that we'll talk about specifically, but I just wanted to kind of take a look at this manuscript and just kind of show you all around so we can at least know what we're talking about here. So hello to everybody in the chat. If you showed up a little early, I might have been chatting it up with you a little bit. James, I see you in there. Lisa, Helga, good to see you, popped in there. Oh, finally a new episode. Yeah, it's been like a week. So this video is going to be segmented a little bit because I got a lot I want to talk about. I'm hoping the volume and the microphone is doing all right. As you can see, I got my monitor in the corner, actually moved it a little closer so that when I'm turning to look at the comments and stuff, I'm not looking all the way over here. So hopefully that will help the volume when I'm reading comments and such. So hello, everybody. I'm glad you're here. Where are you watching from? I know some of my regulars here, but Lisa, I don't think I have seen. Well, I've seen you here, but not since I've been asking where y'all are from. Good. I'm coming in perfect. How's it going, Ross? Hope things are good. Volume is wonderful. Great. That's awesome. Thank you. Even Bezea warned us about it. Yes. They recognize that the text inside of it is, we just say subpar. So, which is interesting because there is a Bible translation that based a decision off of Codex D, a singular reading in Codex D, and we'll talk a little bit about that as well. So let's just kind of jump into the overview. So I'm going to hit my buttons because they're so cool. All right, let's see. Cutscene. All right. So here it is. This is GA05. You're Canadian. Very good. That's awesome. You're Manitoba, eh? That's right. Nobody lives in Manitoba. I think about 5 people live in Manitoba, and you're here, so the 4 others who live there need to come and watch too. I've been to Winnipeg once, and I was there for a week for a business trip way back a number of years ago, and yeah, it was a fun time there in Winnipeg. Anyway, getting off track here. So this is it. This is what you're looking at. This is Codex Bezae. We can scroll through some of the stuff here just to kind of take a look. This gives you a general idea of what the manuscript itself looks like. The other thing that you're kind of looking at here is a little bit of, I think, water damage. And this manuscript has tons of water damage. Now, we're going to talk a little bit about the water damage because there's something interesting that happens with the water damage in an article by Elijah Hickson. Yeah, and you just keep going through. Now, the history of Codex Bezae, like where was Codex Bezae produced? That's what everybody wants to know, is like where and when. So based on the type of writing it is, based on the handwritten font, it's been dated to about the 5th century, somewhere in the 5th century. And when you ask where it was created, you get a really interesting answer. So when I did the search, the results were like, well, it could have been done in southern France. It could have been done in North Africa. Could have been made in Egypt. Could have been made in Beirut. Essentially, they're saying, like, we don't know. And it's just all of these places. Because that basically covers the entire, like, Roman Empire. Generally speaking, not sure where it was made. But the interesting thing, Heffen Jones, who frequents here, and he's probably going to listen to this, he sent me an article a number of months ago. And the article was suggesting that potentially that Codex Bezae was actually produced in Beirut, so out in the eastern part of the Roman Empire, which would be really interesting if that's true, because what that means is that our Western manuscripts geographically don't necessarily have to be in the West. Now, again, that's if it's true. I just kind of perused through the article. I didn't do a real deep dive. But because Codex Bezae has both a Latin side and a Greek side, it's a Greek-Latin diglot. The suggestion was that those who were speaking in Latin may have brought their stuff over to Beirut and produced it in a school there. And some people find it really convincing, and other people's don't. But I think generally speaking, I think there's a tremendous amount of uncertainty as to where this manuscript was produced. And of course, right, that's just generally how it is with a manuscript. Unless there's a colophon that names the scribe and dates it, which they do exist, mostly among the minuscules. But typically, we're not going to know the entire providence, generally speaking. Let's, if we take a look, I don't know if I have, maybe I do. See, so here's the thing about this manuscript. Because I am looking at this on, CSPMT's website, they're not so concerned with the Latin side of it, but rather they're just showing the Greek text. Maybe that's what text is. Is that? No, that's not. Is that Latin? That might be Latin. Yeah, that's Latin. There you go. There you go. You got the Latin right there. There we go. Now, I do not do Latin. I'm trying to learn it, but I can recognize it when I see it. And this is definitely Latin, which is interesting because on the other page, that's where you have the Greek. Now, this is kind of like GA 629. If you've been back to a couple videos ago when I was talking about the Trinitarian reference in 1 John 5:7, the comma. The comma. And GA 629 is a Greek-Latin diglot as well. Now, there's a difference here between Codex Bezae and GA 629. This one here has the Greek on the left-hand page. Now, unlike most diglots, typically what will happen is you have two columns. One side of the column is, Greek or Latin, and the other side is the other language. But in this case, in Codex D's case, what you have is the Latin on the right-hand side and the Greek on the left-hand side. Now, when I took a look at 629, I just immediately thought that perhaps, right, the fact that the Greek in 629 was on the left side meant that it was kind of like, the Latin was on the left side, that this meant that this manuscript had preference for the Latin text because, typically we read left to right. But when we come here in Codex D, the Greek is on the left-hand side. Now, does this mean that the Greek text was the main driver of this manuscript? I don't know. Because generally speaking, we go back to that paper that I was telling you about. I can't remember the title of it either, but you just have to take my word for it. Was basically suggesting that people in Beirut in that time didn't really know Greek, and so the Latin text would have been preferred. So with the Latin text being on the right-hand side and the Greek being on the left side, that kind of throws me a little bit for a loop. But it's also interesting that it's, one page and one page instead of like, two columns. So that's interesting as well. But the other interesting thing about Codex Bezae is the way that it's written out. So each line in here is done. They had a fancy name for it. I forget what it was called. But each line is a clause in a sentence. It's not a whole sentence. It's not like, a paragraph format or anything like that. It's one line per clause. Now, the interesting thing about having one line per clause is that means when you have your Greek translation there and somebody's coming by and doing the Latin translation, that's probably the direction it went. That would be my guess. They can line up each clause with each clause in each language, right? Because sometimes when you translate something into a different language, you end up with a language that is, has more text than the other language, and then it throws everything off. But when you line it up clause by clause, well, that's what you get. Then you can make your your translation work easier. So that's some general information. What we know about it now is that this manuscript was initially found, I believe, by Theodore Beza, of all people. Theodore Beza, the Textus Receptus Theodore Beza, that guy. And so he found it, I believe, in a monastery in Lyons. Is that how you say it? Lyons, France. And he took it and ended up giving it as a gift to the University of Cambridge, where it is to this day. So it belongs to the University of Cambridge Library. Now, before that, what was I going to say with that? Yeah, I guess before that, well, to speak to the textual character of Codex Bezae, this is where it gets really interesting. So you may have heard when we talk about textual variants, sometimes we talk about the original scribe, and then maybe a corrector came along and fixed a few things, and then sometimes we talk about a third corrector who comes along and does some stuff in the later centuries. This manuscript, get ready, hold your hats on. This manuscript had 11 correctors over the centuries. 11. And that's not surprising. Given how terrible of a manuscript this is. Justifiably so. It's surprising it stayed in use when you start considering 11 correctors. But one of the interesting things and one of the more objective things you can do, I won't do this here because I don't know what the policies are on INTF and going to their websites or anything, but when you look up a textual variant on the ECM in the INTF website, you can click a few links, and what it'll do is it'll pull up a table with all of the other manuscripts that have that reading in it, and then they'll give you a percentage of how much a given manuscript matches the one you're looking at. So if we were to look up Codex D's reading, we would get, we click the link, we get a table comparing it with all the other manuscripts. We would get a percentage of how much they agree. Now, of all the manuscripts that the ECM has collated and all the manuscripts that they are comparing, typically you're going to see somewhere between, 98 and 80% agreement between all the manuscripts. But then what happens is when you get to Codex D, when you get to Codex Bezae, it's always at the bottom of that list. It's always there, with the lowest being something like 65 or 64% agreement. This is objectively the worst manuscript and shouldn't be used to make textual decisions. Yes, I'm saying that. It shouldn't be used for textual decisions. So interestingly enough, though, right, it's tempting, right, because it has the ending of Mark 16:9 through 20, and it has the story of the woman caught in adultery in here, but you can't trust Codex D. You can't. Now, this brings me up to a quote, and I can't remember where the quote was. I got it off the wiki page. I should have looked at the source, but I found Tischendorf had said this. I made a short earlier, something similar. If it wasn't even the same one, I'm just pulling it up on my notes here. The warning, not the warning, but the quote is: in general, the Greek text is treated as an unreliable witness, but it is, quote, an important corroborating witness wherever it agrees with the early manuscripts. Now, again, I'm going to repeat myself here. This manuscript is unreliable, but it's an important corroborating witness wherever it agrees with other early manuscripts. Now think about that for a second. This manuscript is unreliable except where it agrees where we want it to agree, essentially. Okay, so that quote just boggles my mind. Another interesting thing about Codex Bezae is Michael Holmes had written a paper on this one, suggesting perhaps Codex Bezae is a recension. Is it possibly a recension? Now, I don't think he called it a recension, but he's asking the question. Of course, if this is a recension, one of the worst recensions in the history of recensions. All right. All right, let's come over to the comments. I'm seeing a little bit of stuff going back and forth there, and then I want to revisit this idea of some of the stuff that's going on with the water damage on this one, because it's really interesting. All right, so let's pop up here. Joseph, how's it going? Good to see you. Friendly neighborhood Jesus freak. Mr. Moreno, Ryan Schaumluffel, did I say that right? Good to see you guys. Let me pop up over here and see what y'all are saying. All right. Mr. Moreno says, it's the most cosmopolitan manuscript. It isn't bound to any location. It transcends your categories. Yes, Mr. Moreno, he's a Bezae onlyist. That's all he reads from. Just Codex Bezae. Ryan says, what's the best study Bible for someone who wants to do a good deep study, but not going into the original language? I've been asking around, figured you might have a recommendation. I use the New King James Study Bible. Like, it's got some notes in there. But you'd want to get yourself a good set of commentaries. Whatever commentary, you're not going to agree with anyone fully in whatever commentary you're reading. I've used John MacArthur's commentaries, Calvin's commentaries even. I don't know, like, you just read the text. I tend to read a lot of stuff online too. Get your books, Douglas Moo on Romans, for example. Who else? I'm just having a moment. Just get yourself a good commentary. I guess that's the thing. You could read some of the older stuff. I'm having a brain moment here. I'm having a moment. If you're looking just at like those like even the ESV Study Bible, the New King James Study Bible, I have a King James version up here with its own study notes in there. Again, like all things, if you're going to go into a commentary like that, you're going to go in with a grain of salt, because again, you're not going to agree with everyone. But that should get you started. And then you'll want to get into doing some good word studies. And again, the New King James Version, specifically the Study Bible, has really good word studies in there. And then, of course, I would say, learn the Greek. Take that step. Learn it. But I know not everybody can. It's not practical for all, but that's fine. Ross Lewachuk says 1611 authorized version, maybe Revelation 16:5 as per Dr. White. I know there's a lot of discussion surrounding 16:5, but I'm not on the up and up in that. I think it has something to do with a potential mistake made by Bezea. Is it Bezea? On Revelation 16:5. Has to do with Hagios or Hosios. I think that's the discussion. I just kind of like seeing some of it in passing. Joseph Palema, Ryan, depends on the topic of which you are seeking to dive deeply into. Absolutely. Just general study like contextual. Where'd it go? Just general study like contextual and cultural and stuff like that. Okay, I'm going to use the mouse here. There we go. There we go. All right, Cambridge has had Bezea for a long time, hence the long name, Bezae Cantabrigiensis. Yes, that's right. Ryan, I'll skip that one. You guys are having a conversation there. Yes, I'm wanting to get reference. I just want to understand what it was written for in the context so I can truly understand the scripture. I currently use the ESV Study Bible, but I am becoming scared if you will become of the verses and stuff like that. I just worry about textual issues. Yeah, I again, the New King James Study Version, New King James Version Study Bible. I don't know. It's relatively cheap too. It's constructed well, and I mean, if you're scared of missing verses, the New King James Version is a Textus Receptus based Bible, so it's going to have those verses that are typically not in the ESV. That's kind of like where I started when I first became a Christian. I had that, and I benefited greatly from it. So I don't know how old you are in the faith, so to speak, but probably still pretty good today. it gives you a pretty good idea of some of the issues surrounding the verses and sometimes the different ways things can be translated, stuff like that. It's very, very good. Those kind of self-defeating quotes are frustrating. I know, right? Oh, we shouldn't use this, but hey, it's good when it agrees. Oh, good. I got your last name right. Schaumleffel. Good. Ross Lewichuk, well, since it only contains the Gospels, that shoots me down. I'm not sure. Oh, what's going on here? All right. Mr. Moreno says, the Cultural Background Study Bible is available in the New King. Oh, cool. I didn't know that. It was Beza's conjectural emendation published in his TR. Yeah, I knew it was something like that. Again, I know Nick has talked a lot about that, and I've seen some discussion back and forth with Territon Fan and Nick Sayers on that. If I'm not mistaken, I thought there was going to be a debate or something on Revelation 16:5. That would be interesting to see. Joseph says, Dwayne, your beard is back in full action. When's the next shave? Yes, it's here. It's here. The next shave? Never. we learned our lesson from the first shave. Excuse me. All right. Friendly neighbor at Jesus Freak says, he made it up. Yes, he made it up. That's, yeah. Hosios versus Asomenos. That's it. Hosios versus Asomenos. Mr. Moreno says Cambridge owns Bezae, which makes it a pure Cambridge edition of the Greek New Testament. Dude, you just won the Internet Award. I should take that comment out and I should short that. Have a little 15-second short of me reading your comment because that's hilarious. All right. Friendly neighbor Jesus Freak says the First Study Bible was a New Oxford Annotated Bible, 2nd edition, NRSV with Apocrypha, but I wouldn't recommend the NOAB to anyone. Yeah, I'd stay away from the New Revised Standard Version and the updated edition too. Ross Lewichuk, thank you so much for the $5. Really appreciate it. That's going a long ways into getting some of my equipment updated in here, so I really appreciate it. Ryan Estes says, new guy there. Been reading the CT-based ESV for years, now having my mind blown by Dr. Robinson. That's great. Yeah, he is a really smart guy. Well respected amongst his peers as well. So yeah, I've had the pleasure to have him on the channel a number of times. He knows what he's talking about. So I'm glad to be able to help share some of his stuff. All right, Ryan Schlumleffel. Schaumleffel. I've been a Christian my whole life, and I grew up KJVO somewhat, but I realized I wasn't growing in my walk with Christ because I could not understand the Old English. I dove into Bible. Interesting. But I did not know how deep the rabbit hole was. Yes, it's a deep rabbit hole. I've been down here for ages. Considering learning Greek, any tips for starters? Yeah, consistency, stick with it. Don't be scared to look stupid. You're going to say things and mispronounce things, and you're going to get things wrong when you're speaking with people. Just don't be scared. Accept the correction. Get yourself something that's going to keep you encouraged, though. That's the thing, because it is a long slog. I did a video a number of years back sharing a book that really helps. It's The Minister in His Greek New Testament. No, if you're a minister or not, doesn't matter. Okay, just the title is A Minister in His Greek New Testament by A.T. Robertson. Get it and read it. If you are not encouraged after you read that book, then like Greek isn't for you. No, but seriously, I found it exceptionally encouraging, and I usually pull it off the shelf and read it about once a year, and I'm about due for another read through. But it really, it's just one of those things that really encourages you in your reason for why. You know, again, that's another thing. Get your why. Why are you learning Greek? Are you just learning it because you want to be like really popular and be the smart guy in the group? If that's the reason why, nobody's going to think you're popular or the smart guy because you know Koine Greek. Okay, that's just not how it works. But get your why, right? The why is, well, I want to be able to read and understand the word of the Lord in the original language, and I think that's a really good, a really good why. But anyway, you got to figure out your own why. If you let it grow too long, you become a Calvinist before you know it. Yeah, not going to lie, that was the first reason why I shaved, because I didn't want everybody to think I was a Calvinist. No, I'm just kidding. But that's hilarious. Or maybe Eastern Orthodox. You know, someone might think I'm Eastern Orthodox if I let it grow out too long. So, I mean, Protestant circles will think I'm Calvinist. The Orthodox circles will think I'm an Eastern Orthodox priest. All right. Not only is the NASV woke, and I mean the 1989, not the current one, the new NOAB's notes are very, very skeptical. Yeah, very left-leaning liberal thought, liberal theological opinions in there. I have Leighton Flowers for that. Yes. Yeah, choice meats. I was listening to one of his choice meats thing earlier this week. All right. Use the modern. Yes. Use the modern Greek pronunciation. It sounds way better, like tremendously better. Friendly Neighbor Jesus Freak says the original OAB's notes aren't quite so skeptical, but still more so than, say, the major American Evangelical Study Bibles. Ross goes on about the Greek that they had a vowel shift regarding iota. They did. Everything basically took an E sound. So eta is Ida. Upsilon became Epsilon. What else? Iota became Eta. The oi sound became E. Basically everything just kind of took an E sound. So many vowels are E. And that's just the way that it shifted, which is interesting because English had a great shift in the way, the great shift, that's what they call it. English had a shift in how its vowels sounded from sometime around the time of Shakespeare up to somewhere around there. Everything shifted. And I don't know all the ins and outs, but I'm just aware that happened. So Mr. Moreno says it depends on whether or not you smoke a cigar with your bearded face. Well, I'm a Pentecostal, so if I put a cigar in my mouth, I'm going to get in trouble. Maybe it's predestined for him to look Calvinist. Maybe I don't have a choice in the matter. It's not my choice anymore. The study Bible I usually refer to when I do any is Holman's KJV study Bible. All right. Okay, let's come back here for a second. We'll revisit the comments later. I wanted to take a quick look at this article that Elijah Hickson had wrote for the Cambridge University Library. And specifically, I just wanted to point out this interesting bit here, all these lines that you're looking at. So if we come up here, he takes a brief detour to another manuscript. You know, I can make this bigger, can't I? Yes, I can. Let's do that. Excuse me. So Codex Greek 14 was nicknamed the Queen of the Cursives, but Her Majesty did not earn her title from the regal appearance. This manuscript has an important text, but at places it is nearly impossible to read due to damage from having been stored in damp conditions in the past. Now this is key. I know we'll relate this to Codex D in a second. One scholar was able to read it, though in an unusual manner. Samuel P. Tregellis, that's a popular name in 1800s text critical circles, noted that although there was no visible writing where there should have been, the text was not completely lost. It was just in the wrong place. On the opposite page, backwards. The damp storage conditions had caused the pages to stick together, and when they were pulled apart, the ink often adhered to the facing page. So this is talking about GA 33. And again, what this is saying here is what's going on is the page got wet. And so when they tried to turn the page, the ink came off of this page and ended up being stuck to this page, although it was backwards. But, you know, they were able to read that and know what it is. Now, why that's important is because the same thing happened here in Codex D. So this kind of damp area in Codex D shows us some missing pages. There was a missing page in Acts chapter 10. And that's the whole story of Cornelius and Peter. You know, the stuff's been brought down. He saw the vision of the blanket with all the animals eat. And then, you know, I can't eat because these are unclean animals. And then he says, what God has cleansed, you shouldn't call common. So that passage is actually missing from Codex D because the pages have been damaged or removed in some manner. But what happened is somebody took a look at the wet spot here, the portion that was damaged by dampness, and was able to determine that the missing passage is indeed in there. Excuse me. So you come down here. The same phenomenon occurs in Codex Bezae. In at least one place, a few letters from the Greek side have stuck backwards to the facing page of the Latin text. So you've got Latin going this way, and Greek going this way. Very difficult to see, but it's there. What is significant, however, is that in this one place, the Greek page was subsequently lost. We have no record of what this page looked like or what the Greek text contained. Thanks to wonderful images of Codex Bezae on the Cambridge University Digital Library, it is possible to work with the image in photo editing software to recover some of the lost text. I give the following example from Folio 455. And then he gives us the example. The first step is noticing the anomaly in a line, the traces of ink that do not look like they are part of the original Latin writing. Some ink is offset on a color difference than what we would expect. Notice in particular the triangle shape in the middle of the above image. This one here. That is an alpha, a backwards alpha on the Latin side of the manuscript. Again, you can see that here. There's the alpha. So the second step is to reverse the image. You can do this in software super easily. Then reading traces of Greek letters backwards with the image reversed, we can see that the triangular shape in the middle is really the remnant of an alpha. Slowly, the letters on either side become clear. Thalassa, that's lake. That's, like body of water. And you can see that using modern technology. You change some of the color details and you reverse things, and you can pull that stuff right out. And that's exactly, it appears as though what Elijah did here. So the final step is reconstruct the text digitally based on the Latin text and knowledge of what is in the text of the most Greek manuscripts. At this point, we can try out some possibilities to see which letters fit with the traces of ink that are there using actual examples of Greek writing from scribe's own hand. Elsewhere in Codex Bezae, we can fill in the text. And so he's got it right there. So yeah, and I mean, that's pretty good. that's pretty good. I didn't even think or know that this was a thing. I didn't know that wet manuscripts, like when you pull them open, they leave their ink on the other page. Like this was totally new to me and absolutely mind blowing. So he goes on to say, what we find is that the reconstruction works. The expected text fits the traces of ink in there, thalasson. The final letter was beyond the edge of the water damage, so none of the ink from that letter transferred to the page. This line is from Acts 10:6, and it refers to Simon the tanner, whose house was by the sea. So I found that to be kind of interesting. So let's I just wanted to take a look at just a couple of the weird readings that were in Codex Bezae. So I didn't type these out, but I guess we could just I could go here. We'll go Bible Hub. Excuse me. And we'll go to Mark 141. This is like the most obvious. I don't know if they have the NIV here. They do, right there on the top. All right. So this is a Codex D reading. Codex D. Let me just make sure I'm showing the right thing. Yes, I am. So this is it. This is specifically the New International Version. So Codex D has this reading here, indignant or angry. So in Mark 141, it says, Jesus was indignant. He reached out his hand and touched the man. I am willing, he said, be clean. Now, this is a man who came to him, I believe it was with a withered hand. And so most of the Bible translations, in fact, every Bible translation that I know, with the exception of the New International Version, translate it this way. Then Jesus, moved with compassion, stretched out his hand and touched him and said to him, I am willing, be cleansed. But in this instance, the New International Version decided to go with the singular reading in Codex D. And so it was, then Jesus moved with anger, or Jesus was angry. Again, this is very specifically a Codex D reading. So for you Bezae onlyists out there, you have Jesus being angry at the man who asked him to heal him. It's the reason, though. The reason for this is because the New International Version is not really a translation based on the Nestle-Aland text. I mean, loosely based on the Nestle-Aland text. What they chose to do, and I don't think I have it down here, but they essentially created their own text to use for the New Testament. Now, it's close to the Nestle-Aland in 27th edition, I think, 26th or 27th, 28th now. It's close, but there's a number of differences. I can't remember what the exact number was. I think it was maybe 400 or 500 differences between the Greek text underlying the New International Version and the Greek text underlying most of the other modern versions. So they decided to go with angered here based on Codex D, suggesting that, well, this is the harder reading, so it must be that. It's a very Bart Ehrman style of decision making, because I don't know of many scholars who would suggest that, Codex D, that manuscript that really shouldn't be trusted, to use a singular reading out of it. I don't know many scholars who would have went with angry here. So that might even be worth a deep dive at some point to see why specifically the New International Version decided to go with the reading in Codex D. Yeah, just absolutely wild. Just wild that that would be chosen. Another interesting reading that comes out of Codex D or Codex Bezae. This again is a singular reading. So in Luke chapter 6, let's pull this up. Luke 6. I need to hit some of the context up here. It had to do with the Sabbath day and people doing things on the Sabbath. Excuse me. Can we go to the whole chapter? Yes, we can. Let's get a bit of context here. So one Sabbath, Jesus was passing through the grain fields, and his disciples began to pick the heads of grain, rub them in their hands, and eat them. But some of the Pharisees asked, "Why are you doing what is unlawful on the Sabbath?" And Jesus replied, "Have you not read what David did when he and his companions were hungry? He entered the house of God and took the consecrated bread and gave it to his companions and ate what is lawful only for the priest to eat." Then Jesus declared, "The Son of Man is the Lord of the Sabbath." But in Codex D, there's more to verse 5. So in Codex D, it reads something along the lines of, "On the same day, he saw someone working on the Sabbath and said to him, 'Man, if you know what you are doing, you are blessed. If you do not know, you are cursed and a lawbreaker.'" How's that for you? He just got finished justifying the disciples eating and rubbing grain in their hands together to eat what they can on the Sabbath day. And then right after he says the Son of Man is Lord of the Sabbath, he goes on and condemns somebody if they don't know what they're doing and then making them a lawbreaker. Like that's truly bizarre stuff. It's totally contradictory to the rest of this passage. And here it is in Codex D. And here's the NIV deciding to use Codex D for Mark 141. I don't get it. All right, and one more. I don't think we need to do a whole lot from here. But Mark 1 verse 18 is another interesting one. This one isn't quite the impact like the other two. But it's interesting nonetheless because, again, it's another example of a place where Codex D sits on its own. So it's as Jesus walked along the Sea of Galilee, he saw Simon and his brother Andrew. They were casting a net into the sea, for they were fishermen. We all know that. And then Jesus says, "Come follow me," Jesus said, "and I will make you fishers of men." And then verse 18, it says, "And at once they left their nets and followed him." So in Codex D, it doesn't say, "And at once they left their nets and followed him." It says, "And at once they left all and followed him." Now, that may be true in the sense of them leaving everything they knew to go and follow Jesus. But you see, the text doesn't say that. The text says they left their nets and followed him. They left their livelihood and followed them, essentially. So you can almost see where the scribe who wrote this, kind of, I don't know if he had all in front of him. I doubt it because there's no other manuscript that has that. But perhaps he was putting his own interpretation into the text. Now, when you begin looking at these kind of oddball things, yeah, I saw the word oddball, the friendly neighborhood Jesus freak. When you see these sort of oddball things going on, you get the sense that Codex Bezae is filled with a bunch of these really strange things. And that is very true. Now, like I said, generally speaking, Codex Bezae, really neat, cool manuscripts, some neat stuff going on in there. But man, we don't want to be using Codex Bezae to be a final decision in text critical matters. So that's it. That's all I'm going to say about Codex Bezae. We'll move on to another topic in just a moment here. So before we do that, excuse me, let's pop into the chat and see what y'all are saying. Change. There we go. Just checking on a few things here. All right. Great vowel shift from Middle to Early Modern English. That's right. Yes. Codex Bezae, eh? It is, eh? How's it going, Jew and Greek? Good to see you. I've been catching a few of your live streams. Been enjoying them. Mr. Morano, 41, in warm indignation. Okay, that's terrible. That's terrible. The New English Bible. Okay, I didn't know that. And becoming angry. Lexham went that way. Very interesting. Okay, looks like a bunch of a bunch of translations went that way. The Revised English Bible, the Common English Bible, the Lexham English Bible, the New English Bible, easy to read version, and what else here? Nothing else. All right. So Friendly Neighbor Jesus Freak says left all does appear at the parallel in Luke 5:11. 1 second here. You need to lay hands. You need to lay hands on a cough drop. I wish. Okay. Someone's bringing some laundry downstairs. I share my studio with the laundry room. So sometimes things like that. All right. Sorry. I have, guys, for those who don't know, I have like Tourette's and the throat stuff and all that. That's part of that. So I wish a cough drop would help that would be wonderful. But not so. All right. Bible version conspiracy. Good to see you. How are you doing? Good evening, he says. I didn't catch your last video on the 51 instances of God removed from the New King James Version. I'll have to catch up, definitely, for sure. But yeah, hope things are going well with you. Ryan Estes, also looking forward to the Majority Standard Bible, Biz text-based Berean Standard Bible. Absolutely. So I've told John Isett that I want a copy of the Majority Standard Bible if they happen to print that. It's looking like maybe they might. So when that comes out, I will be reviewing that for sure. But yeah, so far what I've seen is it seems pretty decent. Like I've been reading the Berean Standard Bible, which is the critical text edition, and I am surprised. I kind of like it. I'm not gonna lie. I've been finding it kind of helpful. But of course that would be better if it was done in a majority text translation. That's exactly what they're doing. So that's an exciting development. All right, now let's hit the, we're going to hit the cutscene button here in just a second. Hang on here. I got to reborrow my book because we're going to take a look at Metzger again. The Bezaean Standard Bible. That's funny. All right. Okay. So I'm going to hit the button here. We're going to cut scene because we're going to move to a new topic. All right. Okay. We are going to be taking a look at the long ending of Mark. Now, I don't know if you guys keep track of some of the stuff that's going on my channel, but I had an opportunity to sit with, I believe it was Michael in the Charismatic Cheetah, and talk about the long ending of Mark. I want to talk a little bit about a stinky comment that was made in there. But first, I want to talk about Marinus and Eusebius, because James, I don't know if you're still there, but I saw you had dropped a video either last night or this morning about Marinus and Eusebius. Now, I had paused it in my mind to do a video on this before I saw that, and I haven't watched it yet. So when I'm done here, I will go watch your discussion on Eusebius and Marinus. Probably going to be very similar because most of the information I got from you anyway, and from your blog and a couple other things. So here's the thing. I don't know why this is not borrowing. I need to see Metzger's stuff here. Oh, sorry, we're kind of busy. Interesting. The printing press is going. I talk too much. That's not going to come back, is it? Oh, my internet's okay. I'm streaming good. Let's go like this. Archive.org. I'm going to take this section out when I'm done with the live stream. Oh, no. What's going on here? Archive.org. There we go. And when I'm done, I'm going to chop this up into little bits and release these as like 10, 15 minute videos. Oh, hey, I'm not even logged in. Look at that. Let's see what happens. I need to see Metzger's work. Oh, it's going so slow. You know what? While we're waiting, let's do it this way. We'll take a look at the NET Bible notes first, and then we'll come and take a look at Metzger, because there's some stuff going on about what Eusebius thinks about the ending of Mark 16:9 through 20. We may not be getting Metzger's view today, but if you come over here, oh, everything's changing on me. I had all this stuff all set up. All right, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to hit the button, and we're going to start over. Here we go, cutscene. All right, so here we are again. We're going to be taking a look at the discussion between Marinus and Eusebius. And I know, James, you had released a video on this, and what I'm going to do is when I'm done, I'll watch it, because I already purposed in my mind that I was going to talk about Marinus and Eusebius before I saw you drop the video. So take that, James. So what I got here is the Net Bible. And for those of you who know, the Net Bible is like the nerdiest nerd of all nerd Bibles that you can get, because it's got very extensive textual notes. And in the instance of Mark 16:9 through 20, they have notes as well. Now let's just dive through the notes, because you're going to see a specific problem here that I want to address with this whole Marinus and Eusebius thing. So the Gospel of Mark ends in some witnesses, gives the witness list, Aleph, B, so on and so forth. Armenian, Eusebius, see Eusebius manuscripts. You see Eusebius in there. It's including two of the most respected manuscripts, Aleph and B. We can talk about two of the most respected manuscripts. This is known as the short ending. The following intermediate ending is found in some manuscripts. They reported briefly to those around Peter all that they had been commanded. After these things, Jesus himself sent out through them from east to the west to the holy imperishable preaching of eternal salvation. Amen. And then he goes on to say this intermediate ending is usually included with the longer ending. However, ends at this point. Most manuscripts include the long ending, verse 9 to 20. I'd rather just say the ending, immediately after verse 8. And this is where it gets interesting. However, Eusebius and presumably Jerome, we're not going to talk about Jerome today, but he includes Eusebius, knew of almost no Greek manuscripts that had this ending. Several manuscripts have marginal comments noting that early Greek manuscripts lack the verses, so on and so forth. But the key thing to see here that's happening in the NET notes here is that they are saying that Eusebius knew of almost no Greek manuscript that had this ending. This sentence here is a mischaracterization of what has actually happened. This is not true. I don't think Eusebius had said, I hardly know of any Greek manuscript, at least not in a context that makes it sound like it is here in the New English Translation notes. Now, this is commenting almost verbatim the same sort of idea that's coming from Bruce Metzger in his commentary. So there seems to be a bit of false information going out about what Eusebius said about the long ending of Mark, or the ending of Mark. So what I got here is a document. Let me make this bigger. By, I think it's Roger Pierce. And it's got all of the letters from Marinus to Eusebius. Now, for those who don't know, Eusebius was a church historian who hailed sometime in the 300s. Same with Marinus. Now, Marinus wasn't a church historian. I think this is the same Marinus who ended up becoming a martyr. He was kind of growing in the Roman ranks and was eventually, I think a false lawsuit was brought up against him, and he ended up being killed for that. And of course, they didn't want him, they didn't want Christians to be up there in Roman power. Now, I might be missing some details there, but generally speaking, they're both members of the church, and they were having this conversation back and forth. Now, Marinus had some questions for Eusebius, and one of the questions that he had was how to deal with an apparent contradiction between the Gospel of Matthew and the Gospel of Mark. And I have his question right here in this document from Roger Pierce. I'll get you the details later. It says, how is it that the Savior's resurrection evidently took place in Matthew late on the Sabbath, but in Mark early in the morning on the first day of the week? So, Marinus is seeing an apparent contradiction between the ending of Matthew and the ending of Mark. Now, let's just stop right there. Okay, everybody talks about Eusebius. Everybody's like, Eusebius, he doesn't say that the long ending of Mark is... But listen, here is Marinus asking a question about the long ending of Mark. So what does Marinus have in front of him? Marinus has the long ending of Mark in front of him. And he's asking a question about it. He doesn't know how to make sense of it. Now someone could be like, well, it's a contradiction. And so, that just means it's not... No. There's ways to understand this without a contradiction. This is exactly what Marinus is asking. So... These are the ways in which Eusebius sends this back to Marinus with the with this stuff sorted out. So he writes this. He says, the answer to this would be twofold. The actual nub of the matter is the pericope, which says this: one who athetizes. Okay, I had to look at the footnote too, so no shame if you don't know what athetize means. It means to mark the passage as spurious. So one who athetizes the pericope, basically one who says that it's not original, would say that it is not found in all copies of the gospel according to Mark. Accurate copies and their text of the Markan accounts with the words of the young man whom the woman saw and who said to them, do not be afraid, it is Jesus of Nazareth that you are looking for, etc. After which it adds, and when they heard this, they ran away and said nothing to anyone because they were frightened. That is where the text does end. In almost all copies of the gospel, according to Mark, what occasionally follows in some copies, not all, would be extraneous, most particularly if it contained something contradictory to the evidence of the other evangelists. That then would be one person's answer, to reject it, entirely obviating the question as superfluous. Now understand what's happening here. Okay, this is not Eusebius saying that it is not found in all copies of the gospel according to Mark. No, what he is doing is he is playing the devil's advocate, so to speak. And he is pretending to be one who would athetize this section of scripture so that he could provide some kind of answer to Marinus. Now, again, Eusebius writes that the answer to this would be twofold. So he has another possible solution to this. So he's saying that some would have a solution of just saying it's not original, don't worry about it. But the second solution, he goes on here. Now, I skipped over a page because that was the original Greek that it was written in. Now, I can do a little bit of Greek, but not enough to just read the fathers and just tell you. So we'll skip past to his English translation. So the second way in which he tries to handle this supposed contradiction is this. Another view, and this is Eusebius writing, from someone diffident about athetizing anything at all in the text of the Gospels. So basically for people who just don't want to call anything spurious, however transmitted, is that there is a twofold reading, as in many other places, and that both are to be accepted. It is not for the faithful and devout to judge either as acceptable in preference to the other. So I'm going to throw some shade here, just like the Calvinists, right? Both are true. It's a mystery. From my Calvinist friends. I hope you got that. Essentially, this sort of second possible way of dealing with it is just basically to not deal with it. And that's what he's writing here in this really short paragraph. Some manuscripts don't have it and some do, and I mean, just kind of whatever. All right, we're not going to bother trying to decide whether one is or one isn't. So that's the second option that he gives. Now that's kind of the first portion of the two ways to deal with it, and then there's this third way, and this is what probably makes the most sense. So he writes, supposing the latter point of view to be granted as true, the proper thing to do with the reading is to interpret its meaning. Okay, so this is him saying, we're going to grant that this passage is true, and we're going to interpret the passage. So if we were to divide up the sense of the wording, we would not find it in conflict with the words in Matthew to the effect that the Savior's resurrection was late on the Sabbath day, or late on the Sabbath, because we shall read the words in Mark, having risen again early in the morning, with a pause, punctuating after, having risen again, and making a break in the sense before the following words. Let us then refer, having risen again, back to Matthew's, late on the Sabbath, because that was when the resurrection had taken place. But the next part forms part of a separate idea, so let us connect it with the words that follow. Early in the morning, on the first day of the week, he appeared to Mary of Magdala. As confirmation, that is what John has told us as well. He too testifies that Jesus had been seen by Magdalene early in the morning on the first day of the week. In this way, therefore, he appeared to her early in the morning in Mark also. It was not that the resurrection took place early in the morning. It was well before that, late on the Sabbath, as Matthew has it. That was when he appeared to Mary after his resurrection. The appearance was not at that time of the resurrection, but early in the morning. All right, so capture that. So what he's doing is he's breaking the phrase in two and punctuating it so that the resurrection happens late on the Sabbath, but they go and meet Mary early in the morning. Okay, and that, I think, given, you read that, how John tends to go with that, and so it makes sense of both John and Matthew, and it pulls them all together. That's probably right. So here's my point. Here's my point in this whole Marinus and Eusebius discussion. It's often quoted that Eusebius says something like, well, there's not many manuscripts with Mark 16, 9 through 20. Now, he didn't say Mark 16, 9 through 20. Sorry, I got distracted here. Yeah, so he didn't say that there were no manuscripts around. You got to understand the context of the whole passage. See, what's happening here is, again, Eusebius is taking on the persona of each of these different arguments, and he is portraying how that position would argue, how that position would reconcile the passage in Matthew and the passage in Mark. And he gives us three arguments. And what's interesting here is Eusebius doesn't go on to say which argument is better. He just kind of presents three different arguments. And so the whole idea that something like, Bruce Metzger or the Net Bible comes and says, well, Eusebius says that there aren't many Bible translations. Totally missed it. Read the whole passage, read the entire question, this letter between Marinus and Eusebius, and you see that it's just him acting it out so that he can bring something to Marinus's question. Again, I point out, like I did earlier, right? We're all looking at Eusebius in this question, right? The NET notes and the Metzger's commentary, they point out that that Eusebius said this thing in the wrong context, but they never point out. They don't point out. You don't see that in the Net notes or in Metzger's work that Marinus. He's got Mark 16, 9 through 20 in front of him. He's asking about it. That's another that's another witness to the ending of Mark. Anyway, I hope that was clear. I hope we cleared that up a little bit. James, thank you so much for the material. I got this link off of your blog. For those who don't know, the text of the Gospels That's James Snap's blog. Be sure to go there. He's got some of the most, what do you say, comprehensive stuff out there on a number of text-related issues. And yeah, so good stuff. Anyway, so that's it for Marinus and Eusebius. I'm going to pop over and we'll take a look at some of the comments, see where we are, and then we'll dive into the, I think it's the last, well, I got two more things to talk about. It's already 10:30. It's only 10:30. It's only 10:30. Look at that. So I want to talk about the funky comment made on a video I did with my friend Michael from Charismatic Cheetah podcast. We did a video this week. So we'll take a look at that. And then I want to talk about Luke 2:14 and some of its issues related to Calvinism. So I hope you're not easily offended. I know of all the things that you can discuss in Christian circles that are that can get really toxic really fast, textual criticism is one of them, and then the other one is Calvinism. Yeah, you bring that up, and some people come out of the woodwork like crazy. So it's not my idea to add gasoline to the fire, but just some stuff that I want to talk about. So, all right, let's come out of the comments. What do we got going on here? Jim, no worries. I very much appreciate you. Thank you. Yeah, I know sometimes the Tourette stuff can get kind of annoying. I trust me, if you're annoyed with it, I get just as annoyed with it. So it's all good. All right, so far so good. Time for the Bezaean Standard Bible. Majority Standard Bible sounds awesome. Yeah, it is. It's going to be. Happily using the NET. Yes, there is. I will say this about the NET notes. I don't like the translation. It's a little bit too dynamic for what I think it should be. And I know there's a lot of discussions around it. I'm just going to go there. It's too dynamic for me. Excuse me. But the notes are heavily biased toward a critical text position. So just be weary of that. And so when I did my series on the 16 verses that are in the King James Version that are not in the modern texts from a Byzantine perspective, by the way, about 11 or so were Byzantine. So when I did that, what I found is that the NET notes are usually or almost verbatim for some of the stuff that's in Metzger's commentary. So they're heavily influenced by Metzger's commentary. So Metzger's commentary is, I think I would say it's probably kind of outdated, but the issue is to get a commentary like that. It's a ton of work and there aren't many out there. There's bits and pieces of some here and there, but to have an entire commentary of changes to the entire New Testament, very rare to come across. All right. So yeah, that's the NET, the parrot. Yes, the parrot problem. Yes, we got James to thank for that phraseology. Joseph Palema, Dwayne, you noticed the net note on Mark 1:1, Son of God, while virtually all the rest of the witnesses have the words, so evidence seems to argue for the authenticity. No such words in Mark 9:29. Yeah, again, text criticism. We talk about textual criticism as a science, but it isn't just science. It's clearly an art. Right, there's a level of inconsistency. The text is just so big. There's so many textual variances, so many manuscripts. It would be humanly impossible to be entirely consistent on the way you make all your decisions. It's not possible, in my opinion. But yeah, I'll check that out sometime. That sounds interesting. James says Bible version conspiracy. Nobody's perfect. That's true. Jerome did know about the Freer Logion. Apparently he did. But that's off topic. All right. Joseph Palema, same self-contradicting thought process. Vast majority manuscripts have Son of God. Let's keep it. Vast super duper majority contain and fasting. Get it out of here. That's right. And the whole and fasting bit, if you've watched my channel enough, you know that I pointed this out, that is a doctrine that is changed in the critical text, because it not only is it removed from Mark's gospel, it's also removed. And yes, I'm purposely saying removed because I think it's original and it's been removed from Mark's gospel. The fasting portion has also been removed from Matthew's gospel. So when it comes to possession and deliverance, now putting my Pentecostal hat on, the whole idea of fasting for the removal of demons, essentially, is not in the critical text. And I remember I was reading it one day, and I don't know why, but it just never clued in that fasting would be a good thing to do for deliverance. And then I saw that variant, and I was like, oh, wow. Like, you know how sometimes you forget the most basic thing, and then you just get reminded? Like, it was kind of like that, right? It was kind of like that. So, yeah, it's and yeah, there's a ton of support for it too. It's the super majority. It's not like it's just, one or two manuscripts have end fasting. No, it's the majority. It's like, it's not just like 60%. It's like 95 or 98%. Like, it's wild. It's wild how much like externally supports those passages. All right. James Snap says, Frankton, Indiana, USA, Western Hemisphere, Earth. Nice. That's where you are. Oh, my favorite detractor. A Hammer, hope things are going well with you. James Snap says, not water damage, that's regent damage. I don't know what the difference is. I don't know what regent damage is. Is that like cleaner? Hammer, nope. It's my night to troll him. You've got to wait your turn. Yeah, you got to wait. Mr. Moreno is still trying to tell me that Bezea onlyism is the way. Yes, James Snap, DC Parker. That's right. DC Parker suspects Beirut. That was the paper that was shown to me. I know there's a difference between an article and a paper and a what I get them all mixed up. I'm not like an academia guy. So if I happen to call something a paper that's an article, or an article that's a paper, sorry. Sorry. All right, James Snap Jr., Western, ID's tendence to dominate, not point of origin. Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay, gotcha. You would think that they would be pretty close, though. Especially if something like, and this is what always gets me, especially if it's something like its influence on the Latin tradition, specifically the old Latin manuscripts. They tend to be Western. So a number of Vulgate readings would be considered Western. So why would it be so regional? Why would it dominate in one specific region? Unless it was started there. I mean, that's not to say that these manuscripts wouldn't make it in other places. Certainly they would. There would be outliers. But I would suspect, and again, this is just me thinking, that if a specific kind of reading is dominating a geographical region, it's probably because it originated in that geographical region. That would be my thought on that. I'd be curious what you think. Mr. Moreno, that's why Metzger's commentary is still so valuable. Even if it is outdated and in need of correction, it's a good starting point. Yeah, and that's just it, right? Like some of the stuff, as critical as I may be of some of Metzger's stuff, that's a ton of work in there. And that's not just Metzger, right? There was a whole committee that did some of the work. I think he just kind of like pulled it all together. But yeah, until we can get some sort of commentary like that with updated information, that's kind of all we have. Now, again, there are other places out there with some snippets from here and there, but a full work like Metzger's isn't available that I'm aware of. All right, Leon. Okay, Leon. Should I add a French accent? Leon, France. Now I'm Canadian, so we all learned a little bit of French growing up. That's part of our Canadian curriculum that we had to. So as much of it stayed with me, I don't know. I can say pour le service en français, appuyez sur le deux, because that's what the bank says every time I call. It says for service in English, press 1. Or no, for service in French, press 2. That's what it is. That's stuck in my head forever now. Yeah, so or TCNT for short, also on YouVersion Bible app. I missed where that part of the conversation came from. Mr. Moreno says, my textual commentary on the Greek archetype of the Gospels is almost ready to publish. That is great news. I know I was using yours for the book of Matthew, because you either sent that to me or I got it off of Facebook or wherever it was. But yeah, I reference your work in Matthew's Gospel from time to time. Pastor Brett. Hello, Pastor Dwayne and all. How's it going, brother Pastor Brett? Hope things are well with you. I saw you were on a live stream earlier. I was going to pop on, but I was still getting ready for this live stream, so I couldn't. But I did get the King James Version Bible you sent me in the mail. Not the Rickerberry, the I forget what it was again. Just a moment. But yeah, I got it. I've been kind of perusing through it here and there. I got to read the introduction and see what he's doing exactly with some of the symbols and stuff he's got in there. So it'll be interesting. Mr. Moreno, Peter and Paul took Proto-Bezae to Rome with them, obviously. That's right. And then somebody took it to Jerusalem and it ended up in Beirut. All right. Ryan Estes, the TCNT. The Critical English New Testament. Okay, that's Adam stuff. Gives percentages for most of the time in the footnotes for textual variations. Yeah, the percentages are tricky because like Wilbur Pickering does something very similar with his F-35 text. Is he provides percentages and they're helpful. When they are in the square brackets, okay? When they're in square brackets, what that means is that the TUT volumes were checked to see where the readings line up. And the TUT volumes, Text und Textwert, basically is a very large collation with hundreds of manuscripts. And so you can use that to gain a percentage of what one reading is to the other as far as its representation in manuscripts. But that's not the whole Bible. I mean, that would be volumes and volumes and volumes and volumes. That's only a select few, a couple hundred readings, not the whole Bible. So where in the F-35 text you have the square brackets with the percentage in it, that's a reference to the TUT volumes. Now, where you have it in round brackets, I might be mixing round and square. You have to check the introduction. But where you have the round brackets, that's an estimation. Now, how these estimations are made, I don't know. I don't know how the estimations are made, but keep in mind, right? One is estimated and one is objective. Okay. I don't know what the case is with the TCENT. I should probably get in touch with Adam and see what he did with those percentages. All right. Yes, Newberry. That's right. Was it the Newberry Bible with the notes? Yes, it's the Newberry Bible with the notes. I have that here. So I just got to get time to peruse that. I've been perusing it a little bit. But all right. So here's what we're going to do now. I want to take a look at this silly comment. Wow, it's 11:15. We're going to take a look at this silly comment that I had, as well as share Charismatic Cheetah's podcast here. So give me a second. It's probably going to... what's the term? Freeze out on me as it's loading stuff here. Oh, Windows 11. I don't like Windows 11. It's doing weird things. Charismatic Cheetah. There it is. If I go... All right, let's screen share. So here is the discussion that we had. So that's the Charismatic Cheetah podcast. So I'm not going to make you sit and watch through it, but what I am going to do is I'm going to share the link so that when we're done here, you can go watch that. There it is. Yeah, so when we're done here, you can go watch that. So that's my friend Michael, his YouTube page. He just started this. He's got a crazy testimony. I don't know if he shares his testimony on his YouTube page or his podcast, but he should. But anyway, he asked me to come on his channel and talk about Mark 16:9-20, and I did. And then what happened is I ended up getting, you get all the results here. Oh, where is it? There is. Hey, where's all the comments? What's going on here? Did I not click the link? Hold on. Something's going on here. What is going on? Oh, there it is. Hey. Oh, that's funny. Okay. Okay. Things are being weird today. Here, let me fix this. All right. So somebody, yeah, if your comment ever disappears, we just kind of figured this out. Sometimes you have to hit newest first to see it. So here's a silly comment I want you to look at. It's, I don't know whoever this guy is, but he says, so Dwayne, this is because, we're defending Mark 16, 9 through 20, and there's some pretty cool stuff in there, right? Those who believe they will take up serpents and drink poison and cast out devils and heal the sick and they'll recover. That's all in Mark 16, 9 through 20. So this gentleman here asks, so Dwayne, do you drink poison and handle snakes? Why should anyone listen to you and not to the critical scholars? Why should anyone listen to you? Well, I mean, I guess that's a good question, right? Why should anyone listen to you? We'll address that in a second. But do I drink poison and handle snakes? Sometimes I drink Diet Coke, and one time a snake got into our church and I actually had to grab it and throw it outside. So the answer to that is yes. Yes. Do you drink poison and handle snakes? Yes. Aspartame is poisonous. Any sort of artificial sweetener. Okay. It's technically poisonous. So the snarky answer to that is yes, I drink poison, and yes, I do handle snakes because we live out in the country and there's snakes out here. And the wife is definitely not going to be doing anything with the snakes. I'm going to be doing stuff with the snakes, okay? That's just how it is. So, anyway, but seriously, okay, just because Mark 16, 9 through 20 says these signs will follow those who believe, okay, it doesn't mean that every time somebody picks up a snake or every time somebody drinks a poison that they're going to fall over or that's good. Okay, it doesn't say that. Okay, we have a brain. We got to not be dumb, right? We got to not be dumb. But of course, what's interesting here is many people don't know or aren't aware that there is a writing, a apocryphal writing. I think it's called the Acts of John. And it refers to a story in which John ended up drinking poison. I forget why he ended up drinking it, whether he was tricked into it or whatever it is, and he didn't die. And then, of course, when we talk about handling snakes, we go back to Paul on the island of Malta. And what happened on the island of Malta? Well, a snake came up and bit him, and then everybody was sitting there waiting around the campfire to see if he would fall over and die. And then when he didn't fall over and die, they started to worship him. And then he was like, no, guys, you need to know about Jesus. So there's some definite reference there. Modern day, these guys up in the Appalachian Mountains who decide to grab snakes and play with them as part of the worship service. Okay, that's silly. That's dumb. It's dumb. Okay, Mark 16, 9 through 20 is not an excuse to be dumb. Now, the second part of the question. Why should anyone listen to you and not the critical scholars? Okay, one is you're not forced to listen to you. Number two, they're not forced to listen to me. Number two is I'd like to think that I have spent enough time in here to be able to share some things that I have found in relation to textual criticism. Typically, I try to represent both sides fairly and accurately. And of course, I've got my opinions. And when I bring my opinions to the table, and this is why I think it would be good to listen to me, is when I bring my opinions to the table, I'm not just bringing opinions. I'm bringing reasons why I have that opinion. And it's up to you. If you like my reasons for these opinions, then by all means take them. And if you don't, more than happy to discuss them. I mean, do I have a doctor after my name? No, I don't have a doctor after my name. When you start talking about, wow, you have to be a biblical scholar and you have to be a critical scholar, that's gatekeeping. I don't like that. We live in an age now where anybody can learn something. We live in an age where information is so freely accessible that if you wanted to learn Koine Greek, the information is out there. You can purchase a couple books, find these websites that are more than willing to teach what they know. Just information is everywhere. And so all I'm doing is taking the information, I'm boiling it down into something easier to understand, and then giving you my opinion on it. Now, again, if you don't like my opinion, fair enough. I don't care. I mean, I want you to believe how I believe, but I don't want you to believe how I believe because I believe it. I want you to reason through it yourself and come to your own conclusions. And I know that we're all not going to come to the same conclusions, but nonetheless, you know, let's have a discussion. Okay, let's have a discussion about it. So anyway, that's funny enough. That's not a comment on my own channel. That's a comment on my friend's channel, Michael from Charismatic Cheetah. Go give him a watch. He typically talks about issues related to continuationism and cessationism. I had a discussion with him a while back about the gift of tongues and glossolalia and stuff like that. And it was a really good conversation. And I think at some point he was on Cultish and he was talking about the Jim Jones cult and the Branch Davidians. Was interesting conversation. He had Mr. Lazuli on talking about aliens and from a Christian perspective. Again, really interesting stuff. Kind of weird, but that's okay. There is weird stuff out there, and I think it's good to address it. Anyway, yeah, that's the third item, and then we're going to move to the fourth one. So let's come over and we'll take a look at some comments, and then we'll move into Luke 2:14 and some of its implications on Calvinism. All right, what do we got going on here? I just want to take a look at a couple things on my stream. Just give me 1 second. Excuse me. All right. Oh, the dog's barking. I hope the sound has been coming through all right as I turn my head and look at the comments. I think we're good. But let's scroll up here. All right. I'm not familiar with the Newberry other than knowing at least one has passed through Pastor Brett's hands, and now it's in my hands. So Friendly Neighborhood Jesus Freak says, I'm still a fan of the Thompson. When I had a duplicate of the 5th edition to compare the Zondi printing to the Kirkbride, I ended up giving the Kirkbride away and keeping the Zondi. Interesting. Mr. Moreno says the Newberry Study Bible is available to peruse on the Internet Archives. That's right. I would imagine it would be. All right, when things stabilize, I might dig me up a Newberry if CBD or Amazon carries them. Ah, cool. Mr. Miranda says, I accuse Dwayne of snake handling all the time, but I do it in jest. Do you though? Do you though? I should find that picture. I snapped a picture of the snake. It was really funny because we have the food bank runs out of our church. And so one of the ladies called me up or texted me and said, there's a snake, and took a picture of the snake and sent it to me. And I said, what, you're not going to grab it? And her response was, not on your life. So I actually went in. Now I didn't just grab it. I think it was a pretty big snake. It was like this long and, you know, quite fat. And so I grabbed a stick and I just kind of like coiled it around the stick and then threw it out. But yeah, it was wild. So that's my snake handling story. I got pictures of it somewhere on my phone. But yeah, the Zondervan TCR is amazing. Friendly Neighborhood Jesus Freak, the 6th edition with the 2K Denmark font is a massive improvement. Yeah, that font is great. But there's a part of me though that kind of likes the old school font. So I have a King James version in the Cambridge Clarion, and that like old school, almost Times New Roman-y kind of font. I don't know. It just kind of makes me think I'm reading something from old times, which I kind of am, aren't I? So I like that. All right. Friendly Neighborhood Jesus Freak, nope. Now, I'm not saying it was aliens, but aliens. That's right. Pastor Brett says, time to go. Good night, Steve and Pastor Dwayne. Good night, Brett. Have a good one. We'll see you maybe on your next live stream or something. We'll see. So Dave's not here. Or is it Dave? Dave's no there. Who knows? It's one or the other. I subscribe to the Cheetah Dude. I'll check out his video. Awesome. Awesome. Also, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button. It helps my channel, the algorithm. Everybody wants to get into the algorithm, right? So hit the like button there. It's very helpful. All right. I'm going to hit the button, and then we're going to move on to the next topic. Here we go. All right. So here we are. We're going to be taking a look at Luke chapter 2, verse 14. And I have been doing a lot of thinking about Calvinism lately. So I'll give you the short answer, and I know this is a very long, drawn-out conversation with exegesis being done at every single passage that ever references. So it's impossible to capture the essence of why I'm going in a non-Calvinist direction in one single video. It would be an entire series of videos. I've thought about discussing it. Still haven't decided if that's the direction I want to go. But nonetheless, there's an interesting textual variant at Luke chapter 2, verse 14. Let me see if I can pull that up here. Luke 2:14. And this is, you know what? Let's go like this. Let's do Bible Hub. Luke 2:14. All right. Okay. So this is the passage in, you know what? I had the ESV and the New King James Version, but this passage in the New King James Version reads, "Glory to God in the highest, and on earth, peace, goodwill toward men." Okay. Peace, goodwill toward men. You know, Jesus is coming on the earth in order to provide peace to men, generally speaking. But in the New American Standard, it says, "Glory to God in the highest, and on earth, peace among people with whom he is pleased." Now, there's a big difference there between, generally speaking, peace and goodwill toward men, or did he come to give peace with those whom he is pleased? Now, think about that for a second. When it comes to the discussion of Calvinism, this has some implications here, because the New American Standard Version, if he's coming to give peace to those with whom he is pleased, he is excluding all men in favor of the elect. Okay, but now if we look at on earth, peace, goodwill toward men, generally speaking, widely speaking, then we have him bringing peace for all men. Of course, the question is whether or not men can receive that peace of their own volition, or whether it's this discussion surrounding regeneration and then faith. So this is important. This, I think, impacts the doctrine of Calvinism, the doctrines of Calvinism in this one verse. Now, we'll take a look at this in Codex Sinaiticus, because the difference between these two readings is a textual difference, but what's more interesting is that the difference between these two readings is literally a single letter. The word for pleased is evdokia, and then the way that it works is it's either evdokia, peace on earth, goodwill toward men, that's goodwill, right? That's translated there. Or if it's evdokies, with the S on the sigma on the end, then it becomes men of goodwill. So peace on earth and peace towards men of goodwill. And of course, men of goodwill is sometimes translated as with whom he is pleased. Now, again, you take a look at Codex Sinaiticus. Let's, before we take a look at Codex Sinaiticus, let me just list the manuscripts that support one reading over the other. So we'll just call it the traditional rendering, peace on earth and goodwill toward men. We'll just call that the traditional rendering because that's how it was rendered in the King James Version. And so the traditional rendering, if you look at what supports it, it's basically 5 manuscripts, 5 uncials with maybe 2 or 3 minuscules. And so you have Aleph, the original, you have Alexandrinus, Vaticanus, Codex Bezae, that's right, Bezae, we're talking about Bezae again, and Codex Washingtonianus. Now these are, 4th and 5th century manuscripts, and these 5 manuscripts, they contain the reading with the sigma, okay? And so the reading with the sigma is as it is in the New American Standard Bible. That is, favor with whom he is pleased, okay? But goodwill toward men that would be basically every other manuscript that contains the Gospel of Luke. And there are a lot. We're looking at hundreds. Now, I didn't list them because there were so many, but basically any unsealed manuscript other than the 5 I've mentioned contain the reading without the sigma. Now, what's interesting is a few manuscripts, so Aleph and B, which contain the sigma, actually had a corrector come by, whether it was the original corrector, one who worked contemporaneously with the scribe who wrote it, or maybe the scribe himself, or a later corrector. I'm not entirely sure. Probably hard to tell because the nature of the correction. But somebody went in and removed the sigma in both Codex Aleph, Sinaiticus, and Codex B, Vaticanus. Now I have on my screen Codex Sinaiticus. And if we zoom in, what's going on here? If we zoom in, I'm not even on the right page. Luke 2, oh yeah, I am right there. So let's zoom in. So if we zoom in, this is the passage right here. Let's zoom in just a bit more. There we go. So this is the passage here. Okay. So ke legonton, so and saying doxa en hypsistis theo, so glory to God in the highest, and epigis, and on earth Irene, peace, and anthropis, among men. And then with the sigma there, it would have been men of goodwill, or with whom he is pleased. You can say it that way. But without the sigma there, what you have is it being linked back to God. So peace on earth and goodwill toward men. Now, yeah, I'm just looking at the comments there. So when you take a look at where the sigma would normally be, it would be right here. And I don't know if we can get any closer than where we are here as far as zooming in on it. But you can see that there is a shadow of where a sigma used to be. Now you might say, well, how do we know that that's not, bleed over from the other side of the parchment? Well, that's because the sigma is going the proper way, right? It's not backwards. It would be backwards if it was on the other side of the page. So there was a sigma there, and it appears as though a scribe or somebody came along and erased the sigma there to bring it up to speed with what the rest of the manuscripts say. So even though its original reading would have had the sigma there and had the non-traditional rendering of this passage, what you have is somebody coming along and correcting the manuscript. Now Sinaiticus has corrections all over it, just like Vaticanus does. Vaticanus is another one where the sigma would have been removed. Now, again, we're not going to go take a look at that just for the sake of time, but the sigma is removed, and it's been corrected to bring it in line with the rest of the manuscript tradition. And this is something you see happen all the time. What's interesting, when it comes to these kinds of corrections, they typically only go one way. You usually see Alexandrian manuscripts corrected to a more Byzantine manuscript. You usually don't see Byzantine readings get corrected to an Alexandrian reading. It's just that the corrections usually only go one way. And again, keep in mind that this rendering without the sigma is in the vast majority, like upper 90% of manuscripts without the sigma. So in this instance here, the reading which favors Calvinism more is not the correct reading, at least from a Byzantine or a majority text position. Now, I'm not pulling this up, right? I'm not saying this to say, well, there's some sort of Calvinistic conspiracy and they're changing the manuscripts and Augustine and all these. No, I'm not saying that. I think like what you could possibly still interpret your way out of this passage without the sigma in a Calvinistic way. But I think it's more, it just reads less Calvinistic without the sigma, right? Because what the sigma does is it makes it explicit that God only comes for those with whom he is pleased. And of course, when you start talking about God coming for those whom he's pleased, well, what is he pleased in? Well, he's pleased in the fact that they believed because he elected them. So yeah. An interesting passage. There's another passage in Romans 5:12, which I've heard a few people talk about, and it's the difference between it being because or so that or something like that. Again, this is a question of whether the word hoti, which is, it's a clause denoting purpose. Is it purpose or contingency? I don't know what those fancy words are. I can't exactly remember. But depending on how you break the word up, right? Like if you look at this manuscript that I have on the screen now, there are no spaces between words. And so if you're reading this, your mind has to put the spaces in there. So with hoti, right, that's the word. Hoti is one word, omicron ta iota, or you can break it up into two words, ho and ti, which means that which instead of because. Yeah, that's another interesting textual issue in Romans 5:12 that tends to lend itself to the conversation surrounding Calvinism or not Calvinism. Now, again, I'm not going to go into the weeds too much right now of why. I wouldn't go in the direction of a Calvinistic soteriology. But ultimately, I'll share another day why, but ultimately, I think Calvinism tends to malign the character of God. And of course, the reason being is because I don't think that you really can reconcile the differences between God's sovereignty, at least how Calvinists put that, and God's decree. I don't think you can reconcile that with man's responsibility. So, in other words, philosophically speaking, right? Tons of philosophy in the Calvinistic discussion, but philosophically speaking, how can you punish somebody for something that they can't help doing? Or better yet, it would be kind of like, and I know the Calvinist is going to say I'm misrepresenting them, but if you take Calvinism to the logical conclusion, most Calvinists will break before that logical conclusion has to be made. But when you were a kid and you would be fighting with your brother and you would take his hand and you would like punch himself with his own hand and be like, stop hitting yourself. The reality is he's not hitting yourself. He's making you hit him. And it's very difficult, impossible, I think, to not see God's decree in sending you to hell for doing something he's doing. It doesn't sit right. Things like limited atonement, for example, when there are scriptures which are very explicit that he came to die even for the whole world. Again, John 3:16, Calvinists will often mock at those who claim John 3:16. But when you start looking at the definition of what the world is, and you look at the same passage, and it says that he's condemning the world too, right? So the word world is used in the same way as those who, it's used in the same way for the whosoever. And then the word world is used in the same way for those who deny. There's some problems, and I debate back and forth whether or not I should take some time and go over some of these passages. It might be interesting to do so. So coming back to Luke 2:14, this is an example of how certain textual issues can make impacts on some of the teachings and doctrines. Now, does Calvinism make or break salvation? I don't think so. So long as you come to the point where you make that logical break between God's sovereignty and man's responsibility. If you make that logical break, we're good. But if you come to the position of saying God authors sin, well, then I'm sorry. There's a problem there. All right. So Romans 12, isn't that the epi plus relative equals on whom, in whom? Yeah, it's the on whom, in whom. I thought it was hoti. Again, this is just something I recently heard about Romans 5:12. So I'm gonna have to do a dig or a dive into that. Ho, yeah. So that would be an interesting discussion. And I think that has some inclinations on how we are punished in regards to Adam's sin. It is in whom Adam sinned, or in yeah. oh, what is it? I'd have to go check it out. I don't want to do a total deep dive into that right now. But it comes down to the question of how sin is imputed to somebody, whether it's original sin or whether it's your own sin. And that specific phrase in Romans 5:12 can determine whether it's one or the other. Again, you could probably interpret that any way you want. There's probably some funny way to get down there, interpret it, whichever, regardless of the kind of word it is. But nonetheless, I think that would be worth looking at, especially as it relates to textual matters. So James Snap says, I'm still here. Yes. So yeah, that's my thought on Luke 2:14. Again, I'm going with the Byzantine text consistently. I'd be going with the Byzantine text here. So I would see the non-Calvinistic reading as the better option here externally. I'm sure you could probably make some cases internally. I mean, the only thing that I would think possibly could have happened if I wanted to play the other side with that sigma. Let's come back to the screen share. So what sometimes happens is the sigma can occur at the end of a line. Here I am. There we go. The sigma can occur at the end of a line. So if the sigma were to occur here, sometimes it's done in a smaller type. And I suppose you could make it possible that someone maybe missed the sigma and then went on to the next line. Again, this is talking more about internal criteria. And again, if you watch this channel enough, you know that generally speaking, I prefer to stay away from internal criteria when we can. Why? Because internal criteria can be manipulated much easier than external criteria. In this instance, we have basically 5. There's a few more, but basically 5 manuscripts with the sigma. 2 of those 5 have been corrected with the sigma erased, and then literally hundreds of other that just don't have the sigma. So this is definitely the Byzantine reading, the majority text reading, probably the Textus Receptus reading is without the sigma. And so, yeah, interesting. It does tend, again, right? It does tend to change doctrine, just slightly, just a little bit, just one letter is sometimes enough to cause a little bit of an issue. So it's important to get that right. All right. So that's all I had for today. Let's pop over. We'll read some of the comments, and then I think we will say good night. All right. All right, where are we here? Whoop. Oh, I'm hitting buttons. All right, Mr. Moreno says, Dewey Reams reflects the same reading, but it's less interpretive. Glory to God in the highest, and on earth, peace to men of goodwill. Yeah, interesting. James Snap Jr., the 2011 went with Orgistes. The 1984 NIV had, yes, I didn't touch on that, but the original 1984 had the proper reading there. And then after their updates later, ended up going with angered. Yeah, why? Who bewitched them? All right. Friendly Neighborhood Jesus Freak says, Ryan Estes, the Clarion is also a single column paragraph Bible. My only critique of the Clarion is that the column is too wide. The single column is too wide. If they could just narrow it just a little, it'd be perfect. So Mr. Moreno says, I don't think it has anything to do with Calvinism. I take it to mean the Israelites. It applies beyond the Israelites, obviously, but it should be read in the context of Luke. Yeah, I get it. Yeah. Friendly Neighborhood Jesus Freak. I see what looks like a scratched out sigma. Yep. James is still here. Romans 5:12. Isn't that the epi plus relative on whom, in whom, or for that? Helga Evanson's Romans 5:12. Yeah, I think it had something to do with a Latin translation that came over into Greek. Again, I haven't fully looked at the Romans 5:12 issue. I should do that because I think there's some interesting connotations there. I could discuss the issue of moral inability, but it will need to be saved for Discord. Yeah, bring it. Bring it into Discord. Helga Evanson says, in Adam all sinned, or versus because all sinned. Right. That's right. James Snap Jr., ahem. The net annotator seems to have minimized Jerome's habit of recycling the material of others, such as Eusebius. Yeah, I know I saw on your blog you had talked about Jerome. It would be worth talking about Jerome's usage here as well. But yeah, he's just as misrepresented as Eusebius was. But in this specific video, I wanted to address Eusebius, and I'm probably going to chop it up and release that as a separate video by itself. So the NIV was influenced by Ehrman. Yeah, I think, honestly, I think that was. I think we can actually say for certain that they went with the reading of Jesus being angry based on Ehrman, probably based on his orthodox corruption of scripture. That would be my guess. All right. I think that's it for today. It's 11:15. It's been a while. I'm approaching 2 hours. I don't like my live streams to go beyond 2 hours. So anyway, brothers and sisters, I hope you found this live stream insightful and helpful. And until next time, we'll see you around.